Welcome to the Joanne Avison podcast, and I'm super excited today because I've just had the news from my publisher that Myofascial Magic in Action, my next book, is available for pre-order. It means it's coming out this year. And I just thought I'd take an opportunity to tell you a little bit of the story around that book, because it gives me so much pleasure to describe the difference it's made to me in my world to be working with my friend and my colleague, Paul Thornley. So before we get to that, let me tell you a bit of pre-story. So back in the day when yoga, fascia, anatomy and movement came out, one of the things that happens with a semi-academic work is if it's kind of sold steadily for 5 years, which is quite a big ask for a book of that size and scale and specific interest, it gets an invitation to go to second edition. Now, since writing it in 2012, 13, 14, and it came out in 2015, an awful lot happened in the world of fascia. Now, little side bit here. The book really was called Fascia, Anatomy and Movement. And one of the things that I wanted to be able to do was incorporate the word spirit, or the approach to spirit, or the anima animus that animates the living bodies that manual and movement practitioners like me are working with. It's one thing to study anatomy and biomechanics and all the movement protocols that we learn, as if the books can give us a map to get us to the territory. It's quite another thing as a teacher in a room with living people in real time to work with living people in real time who are moving and breathing, and they don't stand still and behave like the pictures in the book anyway. So what was I going to do? So in long conversation with my publishers, Handspring, we decided to call the book Yoga, Fascia, Anatomy and Movement, because it gave me some license to bring in a more metaphysical aspect. And for me, that's where the fascia lives. For me, it's the interface where spirit animates the form that we're in. And since our shape or our morphology is archetypal, which means it's unique to each one of us, that made perfect sense of the book. And it also gave me license to put it into 3 parts, to discuss all sorts of things, but besides movement, besides yoga, besides even anatomy, I was able to include the story of how fascia has changed our understanding of the human body through history, and why understanding the embryo is so crucial to what we do, and why recognizing our anima animus, the way we move according to our archetypal patterns, or our somatic patterns as they're called, is absolutely crucial to understanding all the things that we're becoming familiar with now, such as myofascial release and somatic release and somatic movement, and all these terms which are emerging to explain 3 specific things about fascia. 1, its ubiquity. In other words, it's everywhere in the human body. It's not just discrete sections that join certain bits to other bits. And it's brilliant because, first point, that ubiquity, that everywhereness, means that there isn't anywhere in the human body that the fascia isn't. Just have a think about that. Second thing that you absolutely have to know about it is it's the largest sensory organ of the body. Drop the mic. That's great big huge, because it changes everything we thought we understood about the nervous system. It doesn't necessarily make it wrong. It just calls us to expand our understanding. Now, the big third thing in this conversation is that fascia is under tension everywhere in the living human body because of the way we formed as embryos. And that's another whole story for another whole day. But those 3 things mean that the way we can appreciate movement in the classroom as teachers, and the way we can actually understand our clients' unique expression of any of the movements that we're trained to teach, requires us to understand how myofascia actually works as a whole under tension throughout the entire body and somehow giving us this sensory or proprioceptive feedback at all times. It shifts the entire paradigm of how we understand the human body. So, given that, I created a course called ABC, Foundation Course, Anatomy Basic Course. And I was happily teaching it all around the world, all over the UK, and I was asked to come to Greece and to go to Paris and to go to Scandinavia, and I'd even been invited to San Francisco, which was super exciting, when lockdown happened. And that meant, for all of us, I think, a pivot. And that pivot put the ABC masterclasses online. Now, I then created a series of 4 masterclasses. And those 4 masterclasses were completely designed to translate what by this time was 20 to 30 years of dedicated study of fascia research in the anatomy lab, and working with all kinds of protagonists who very kindly, a select 5 of them, came to help me write Myofascial Magic in Action. Now, where did that come from? Well, Myofascial Magic in Action is the title we derived from the first of the 4 masterclasses. So basically what happened is that Handspring called me and said, love these masterclasses, love the work you're doing. Please, can you make books for practitioners that are much easier to understand than yoga, fascia, anatomy and movement, because that's semi-academic? Can this be more fun, have some practice in it, a bit more extensive, but just focus on one aspect at a time? In fact, would you do 5? And we mulled over the titles and the possibilities, and I was commissioned to do 5 books over several years. So Myofascial Magic in Action was born in that conversation. The job was to make it as universally applicable to movement teachers as possible, introducing those that don't know so much about fascia to fascia, but also making sense of so many different views and ways of understanding it for every movement teacher, whatever their discipline and training. An enhancement, a sort of upgrade, no matter what it is that you were trained in foundationally. Why? Because it comes from a different view of the human body. It's 21st century anatomy, and it claims and demonstrates that while the phrase biomechanics is what we use to explain and describe human movement, there is nothing mechanical about us. So fast forward to this manuscript, divided into 5 parts: the history, the mystery, the magic, the 5 R's of Myofascial Magic, and then part 5, the practice. So I'd written all of it except the 5 R's, and then I decided to invite 5 wonderful protagonists who you're going to hear about in separate interviews: Dr. Wilbur Kelsick, Dr. Karen Kirkness, John Sharkey, clinical anatomist, Helen Eady, about to become a clinical psychologist, and Paul Thornley. And Paul changed the order in which I suggested the 5 R's in my original class. He pointed out that the magic behind the story comes from truly understanding first exteroception, then interoception, then recognizing patterns that we don't need anymore, that we can let go of because we've understood those, and then restoring our original born into patterns, what we came from as embryos, because we now understand fascia and we understand its spiraled nature. And we understand why this is a spring-loaded system, a living, animated form that was originally designed to spring. So we changed the order, and we were in long discussion, and Paul lives in Dubai and I live in England. And I said to him, Handspring have asked me to illustrate this book myself. And I did feel very self-conscious about it, because my publisher spotted some really goofy sketches that I'd done on the notice board behind me and asked me if I would use them to illustrate the book. And during lockdown, I had taken this lovely little course on learning to draw a cartoon selfie. Why, I don't know. I think my sister called me and said, you should try this too. Anyway, I did it. And I'd been playing around with these different drawings. And my publisher saw them and said, I love them. Please, can you put them in the book? It makes it lighthearted. It makes it fun. And I was very self-conscious, but I went for it. So I want you to imagine me now, a weekend before I've booked a studio to film the practices so that I know what to draw and what to put in the book and what to make a course out of. And I phoned Paul, who I've been talking to extensively through this whole process. And I said to him, will you meet me on Zoom on Sunday at 6 p.m. and talk me through the kind of movements that need to go in the book? Because I don't want them to be purely yoga. Now, Paul is an instructor trainer in Pilates, and he has as many years experience in Pilates and more in martial arts as I have in yoga. So between the two of us, we had this beautiful mixture of movement awareness to absolutely understand micromovement magic, or as we call it, micromovement medicine. Because when you understand what you're doing and you know what order to do it in, given all our years of studying fascia and anatomy and neuromuscular therapy and structural integration between us, literally magic happens. And Paul's been doing this work for years, working directly with micromovements and seeing the difference that it makes. So picture me. It's Sunday evening. I'm booked to have a Zoom call with Paul. The studio's booked for the following week to film the movements that we're going to discuss and organize and select, especially for Myofascial Magic in action. And just as I'm about to go on Zoom, there's a knock at my door, and I'm assuming it's a delivery or something. And I go to the door, and who is standing on my doorstep but Paul Thornley? And I look at him. I've got my computer in my hand so that I don't miss him coming onto Zoom. What are you doing here? And he says something like, well, that's nice. Aren't you going to make me a cup of tea? It's a very British thing. We have to have a cup of tea when anything big's happening. And I'm like, how come you're here? And he said, you've always said doing does it. So let's do it. And he had literally got on a plane in Dubai and flown to Gatwick, got a train to Brighton to come and see me and work with me in the studio. And he did that twice more to make the course that we created together absolutely magical. And he looked at me and he said, make me one promise. We go global or we go home. And that's precisely what we've been doing for the last year. We've been working with the most fabulous group of Myofascial Magic in action specialists. It's just been one of the most fantastic journeys of my life. I can't tell you how much I appreciate him and all the authors that have come into this book and contributed to the chapter on the 5 R's. I didn't want anyone to think it was just my crazy notion. I chose doctors, practitioners, clinical anatomists who work all the way around the world in all different modalities, bringing their knowledge and their understanding of fascia together into this program to make sure that it wasn't my whim. And the testimonials that we get from some of our participants in the program just make every minute of it worthwhile. But we dared to create that program prior to the book. And somebody asked me, why is it called Myofascial Magic in Action, MMIA? And what came out of my mouth was the movement of magical inner awareness. I don't know where that came from, but the truth is it's all about restoring, releasing, refining the rebound and the recoil that is completely innate and natural to us if we know what we're listening to and how to listen to it at every age and stage of fitness, whomever we're working with. It really is magical. And I am super excited because the book has got the theory in it and the story in it, the history, the mystery, the magic, The 5 R's by my contributing authors, friends, colleagues, and a taste of the practice. So please go and pre-order Myofascial Magic in Action, the movement of magical inner awareness, and understand why it makes such a difference, whatever modality or discipline you're trained in. I really pray it puts the fun and the magic into movement. And it's a privilege to have been able to do it. I haven't taken an out breath yet because the next one's on its way, being written as we speak. But that's for another time. And look out for the interviews with the 5 authors: Dr. Wilbur Kelsick, Dr. Karen Kirkness, clinical anatomist John Sharkey, Helen Eady, and Paul Thornley. Cannot wait to share them with you. Have a magical day.